What is your CSTP focus again?
Yeah, so again, I'm going to read it off. It's 2.4, creating a rigorous learning environment with high expectations and appropriate support for all students.
Okay. And so what is the learning goal for this lesson?
So the students need to, two parts. They need to be able to define the difference between predator and prey. And then secondly, they need to be able to explain the parts of the food web. And so that's where the application of that vocabulary is going to come in.
So how would you differentiate your instruction given the types of students that you have with different strengths and different needs and your CSTP?
Right. So the students that need a little bit more support, the expectation for the vocabulary will be simpler. So for example, like a piece of evidence for one student I'm thinking of in particular would include basically recreating the food web. We're going to focus on a desert food web. So the student will need to glue pictures of the animals in the corresponding spots and label them with a word bank. So if it's a hawk, if it's, for basic vocabulary support, and then also with a word bank, I determine if they're predator or prey, and then be asked to explain the food web. Whereas another group that is working at a more rigorous level or can be challenged more, they will have a more complicated food web example, and they will have to follow arrows that are already on there to identify the different chains and use that prior knowledge, the food chains from prior lessons, and then be able to explain the components and apply the vocabulary, but with far less support.
So what you're saying is you have students that have a higher need, that you've differentiated it so that one of them, they're going to be gluing the words on.
Yes.
And being able to use is it like a template?
Yeah, a template.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one, it's more independent.
Correct.
And they have to know the words more.
Yes.
Great job. That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's good. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, after your lesson is done,
Mm-hmm.
what do you plan to collect as far as like the student product that they're going to be doing?
Right, and that's actually what I was just describing. So one student will have a blank food web. This is the student that requires more support, so having access to the vocabulary, but then needing to be able to know how to apply it. So putting all the pictures of the animals in the correct spots, using the word bank to determine like the animal names. Is it a rabbit? Is it a hawk? Whatever. And then also being able to then label, is it a predator, example, a predator or prey, and then be able to describe it, the relationship, like which consumes what, and for example, knowing that the plants are the producers, right?
So on the when you're working with the kids with your CSTP, it sounds like you want them to have higher rigor. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what would you add to that to give it a higher rigor? I know that there are two different products that you're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the rigor in the higher group? Can you
Yes.
explain that?
So for that one, they'll have a more complicated food web example. It will already be put together, but then they have to be able to interpret its meaning. They have to use the arrows to recognize all the different food chains and identify how many, be able to describe, the order, like in this food chain, I see this animal, then this, and again, apply that vocabulary and be able to explain the different possible ways that can play out, because it can be, very detailed.
Okay, so I'd like to come in your classroom and observe you. What do you think would be a good time for us to do this?
I'm thinking on a Monday, that time.
This coming next week, Monday?
That would be fine.
Okay.